Hi, everyone. Today's conversation is with Kirsten Snobeck, and her story is about that piece of the awakening journey where we have to really unravel from our conditioned self, from that part of us that was conditioned by our family, society, expectations, and really go on a very personal journey away from that. Her story is about how she left a thriving career in architecture to become an Akashic guide. And it's really the deeper story here is really about how intuition, how following your intuition, which can initially be softer than those loud voices of what we should do and who we should be, but about how following our intuition is really the first step to awakening, to becoming our more authentic selves, to our personal evolution, and then by extension, collective evolution. And of course, through her story, we get to hear about what the Akashic Records actually are. So, this term, the Akashic Records, just to put it in some context, it really kind of appeared at the turn of last century during the Theosophical movement. Some of you might have heard of Theosophy. So, in particular, we have Helena Blavatsky, who channeled a lot of wisdom, studied a lot of Eastern traditions, and she introduced the word to us, the Akasha, the Akashic Records, as this kind of like quantum information field where everything, all information about everything is just accessible to consciousness. And then the term became really popularized in the 1920s with Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, who claimed to channel his information from the Akashic Records. So that's where that term comes from, just to give you context. And finally, before we dive into the interview, I just want to let all of my listeners and viewers know that the Shattering Place podcast episodes will always be free, available to everyone, available on many different platforms. And that is my commitment to you. I'm not doing half episodes. Everything you start for free, you can finish the whole episode. But I do have a private Substack tier, the paid tier of my Substack community. And for that community, there is an opportunity to make comments on the post and ask questions of my podcast guests. And then when I have enough questions, I am going to do a private conversation just with my community, a separate interview. But that's just if you are interested in the paid tier. It starts at $10 a month. It's very little, but for that, there's a lot of other things you get. However, just to let you know that the podcasts are always 100% free and available to the public. So I think that's it. We're going to jump in now and listen to the conversation. I think I only interrupted her once because I was that excited to get started. So enjoy, everyone. So, everyone, I'm really excited today. We have here with us Kirsten Snobeck, who is an Akashic guide and intuitive artist grounded in the real world. Through Akashic Records readings and her channeled artwork, Energy Blueprints, she helps people reconnect with their inner guidance and access the deeper intelligence of their own soul. And I'm really excited because we're here today with Kirsten to talk about the Akashic Records, what they are, how she accesses them, how they help people, the power of intuition as a pathway to multidimensional awareness, particularly on a new earth. And also to ask what she has seen through the Akashic Records as to humanity's potential, both from a point of view of like our biological upgrades and enhanced psychic abilities, but also the potential new timelines or a new earth that she might have seen. And of course, on the way, we're definitely going to hear about her own shattering collapse, the moment her known life changed and what came next. So let's get into it, Kirsten.
Thank you. Where
I
would
think
you
we'll
like
start
to
with
start?
I think we'll start with the Akashic Records. So just to explain to people, what they
Yeah.
are.
The easiest way to describe them, it's like this cosmic library. Every soul has a history. They exist where there isn't linear space and time, right? So our past, present, and future thoughts, emotions, actions, intentions, everything that resides within our soul's history, encompassing all that. That's what the Akashic records are. Otherwise, some people call it also the information field, the quantum field. And so it's just like this vast library, and whenever you access it, it's almost like you're taking a book off of a shelf in your own library, you're opening it up to the page, and your guides, your guardians, your highest self is giving you the information that you need in that moment.
Hmm. So it's kind of like this idea that there are no secrets in consciousness. Like, as I spoke about, I think in my episode 2, there's this glass mind. Like, everything, all information is available all the time. It's just a matter of accessing it. So it feels like the Akashic Records is like almost a way of organizing this information so that it can be accessed by, consciousness. Does that
Yeah,
summarize
exactly.
it?
And it's I don't think our human minds can really fathom how much information that is. And so while it
Mm.
is all there your highest self is really just sending through what you're meant to hear in that moment.
Yes.
I've
So
had my own frustrations where I'm asking certain things and I'm not receiving the answers that I'm looking for necessarily, but I'm receiving the answers that I need. And I'm looking back on a reading, a few months later and realizing the timing around everything too. Right? It's people talk
ah,
about divine timing and I can get frustrated with that certainly as a human, but knowing that there is a bigger picture.
mm.
We don't necessarily need to know everything in the moment, and a lot of the times what comes through, it doesn't necessarily make logical sense, but it makes sense when it hits the body, when it hits that heart space.
Yeah, this makes so much sense to me, and it touches on something that I want to get back to that in a moment because I want to ask you about your story. But I'll just flag it to say that it's not something I've really gone into in my podcast, but I'm really interested in this concept of that we all have invisible helpers. That it's not just that there's consciousness or that we're souls, but that there's this guidance and there are these guardrails on the records and the information we get that even though there's a glass mind and infinite access to consciousness, there is this kind of system in place whereby we only can kind of access what's best for ourselves or best for other people. Anyway, I'll put a pin in that because I'm sure you have lots to say about that. But first, I'd really love it if you share with our listeners how you even like how did you get how did you learn about the records? Like, what was your journey to discovering them, and how did you learn how to read them? And yeah.
Yeah, man, I mean, it's been a journey. So to give you just a little bit of background into, my life growing up, it was very much like 5-year plan, straight A student, perfectionist, doing everything that everybody thought I should be doing, people pleasing and just looking for a lot of external validation. And a
Mm,
lot of it was really at the expense of what I was feeling internally. Right. And it's like, I think through society, through families, even with their best intentions, a lot of the time we're really taught to not trust our inner knowing,
mm,
especially as kids, right? Because we're just kids. And but kids can be old souls too, and it's like when you think back to when we're little, and we just have those feelings inside of us, and I think it can
mm,
just be covered with layers upon layer, um, of like gaslighting and minimizing and just not necessarily in a way where people meant it, but it's, oh, you don't feel that way, oh, you don't want to do that, and you
mm,
and you stop trusting what you thought to be true, right? Because it's like,
mm.
oh, well, my teacher knows better or my parents know better. And so, it got to this point in my 20s where I just felt completely numb. And now I realize that everything started changing during my Saturn return. And I didn't even know what a
Ah,
Saturn return was
yeah,
at that time.
yeah,
Like it wasn't until 6, 7, 8 years later that I just looked back on that journey. I was like, oh, that's
yeah.
really interesting.
The Saturn, just for listeners, the Saturn return is like so when you're born, if you're doing your astrological birth chart, Saturn is obviously one of the many planets, and it has a particular placement in your chart at a specific degree, a sign, and even a house it's in. And as your life goes, Saturn is always moving, all the planets are always moving. And when Saturn returns to where it was exactly at your birth, it takes about 27, 28 years. And when it returns to that exact spot in your chart, that's what's called the Saturn return. And often it's a time when we kind of have a crisis, our first adult
Mm.
crisis, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, and this is before the Akashic Records, but I wanna speak to it just because it's when I first
Mm,
started getting in touch with my intuition, right?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
was on antidepressants for 12 years, I was really unhappy, and, I started, working with an acupuncturist. I started working with a nutritionist. I started this yoga that really spoke to me, Earthways yoga. And that was just the beginning of everything. It felt like a snowball where it was coming off of antidepressants, stopping which is a journey in itself, right? And
Yeah.
it took a lot of thought. And this is not to say that that's going to be somebody else's journey, but it was mine to try to do that. And because I felt like I was very numbed out to life and not in touch with myself. And so that was, my journey of my 30s or that was at 30, and then coming off of that and stepping into yoga, stepping into nutrition, just healing my body after years of depletion.
Mm.
I had a lot of side effects coming off of that and just a lot of ripples for a while, right? It's like you're clearing a lot of energy there. Um, and at that time I was in Colorado, practicing architecture. That's what I did for 20 years before leaving my job in 2023, and very high pressure job. And I loved what I did to an extent, but it was also was so fast paced, and
Mm.
I really did get burned out. I
Yeah.
was very good at it, and so when I left, people were very surprised.
Yeah.
I got to this point, it was October 2022, where I just was at such a low, and I knew I wanted to leave. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had been listening to a podcast that introduced me to the Akashic Records, and I started taking a course so I could access my Akashic Records.
Mm.
I got the course in October 2021, and I opened the records for a full year before any messages came through.
Wow, really? For a full year? So what did you do in that year? You just sat there in
I
the
just sat in the energy, and with me being a recovering perfectionist, it really pissed me off. I
I
was I
bet,
was
yeah.
frustrated, and I wanted so badly for these messages to come through. And it wasn't until a year later when I had, joined a community where I'd learned the records and we started practicing with each other. I remember during this practice session, someone would ask a question and we would all just channel and take notes, for 5 minutes, and then we would share what had come through. And this was the first time where it really opened up for me because I noticed that we were all channeling differently. And I had only heard one or two
Mm.
people channeling before, and I thought I was doing it wrong. Typical
Ah,
perfectionist, and
yeah.
that was blocking me. And then people were asking these questions, and some people were coming with almost very poetic words. Other people were coming with, visions and imagery, metaphors. It was like we were all receiving different pieces of the same puzzle, and every single thing resonated with the person asking the question. And
Yeah.
so it was this huge aha moment to me that, oh, I'm just channeling differently than the people that I've heard before. And that's when the floodgates kind of opened. And that
Ah.
was maybe September 2022, October 2022. And that started the beginning of a 5-month period where I was working with psychic clearings, past life regressions, Akashic readings, Reiki, family constellations. I was so determined to be
That's a
able to get
lot.
to a point, yeah, where I wanted to leave my job, and I was incredibly scared, um, incredibly scared. And I remember seeing numbers corresponding to dates, and I woke up on one of those numbers, 313, and I just knew that it was time to quit my job. And
Mm.
I didn't have, the plan. I had money saved, but I didn't have the step-by-step plan, but I
Mm.
just knew in my body that it was time to go. And I received an Akashic reading from one of my friends in that community, and she saw this burnt forest to the ground. And it was just this, and it was almost like the energy had been sucked into a vacuum where it's like, "This timeline is closed now, you can't stay here anymore," and that's what
Wow.
it felt like.
Yeah.
And, the last thing I'll say is I'd also been seeing the numbers 321 and 123, kind of like a countdown of my old life and a count up to my new life, and I gave my notice
Wow.
on 32123.
Wow. That's crazy. That
Yeah.
is actually crazy. I
And the
love these
last
signs.
yeah, and the last day of my job was April 20th, which was this rare hybrid eclipse, and I remember looking at the astrology around it. It was like a gateway to a new reality, and it was so incredibly
Wow.
fitting because I didn't choose the date, my, bosses did, but really the universe chose that date, and that was, the beginning of stepping into a very different life. And it's,
Yeah.
it's in a week, it'll be 3 years.
Wow. That's incredible. I
Yeah.
can't believe that you sat in that energy for a year. I mean, it must have been like the training ground, like the invisible training.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me of now wished, that I had, that things had been different, of course, but I know it was the way it was meant to be. But it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, if I'd only started practicing earlier, maybe I would have opened that up. But
Yeah.
it was just like that energy of determination.
And so prior to this, had you been kind of like, how would you describe your relationship with intuition prior to this big shift, this big shattering, this big life direction change?
Just like these little glimmers and whispers.
Mm,
The way I like to describe it is if, you're at a party and your mind and ego is like the center of the party, dancing on the tables, screaming
mm,
loudly, the center of everyone's attention. And your intuition is like the quiet wallflower in the corner where unless the party really quiets down, you're not going to hear that voice.
mm.
And it was a lot of practice. I remember the first time in a yoga class, I started speaking with my body and started getting responses. That was sometime in my early 30s where we were asking ourselves yes and no questions. And I remember just getting this yes, like a bubbling up from my heart space.
Mm,
Wait a minute. And since then, I've been able to, when I've had food intolerances or I've broken out in hives from different supplements, I've been able to ask my body, what is this? What is that? And so a big part of it was allowing those natural signals of the body to step forward and helping
yeah.
me make decisions. I was always so attached to what the mind had thought that I didn't realize that I
Yeah.
feel the body this way. I knew nothing
Yeah.
about somatic anything at that.
No.
So that
No.
was huge for me. And also just I started listening to those feelings, right? Like stepping into acupuncture, stepping into nutrition, just there were all these little but really big things that were part of my healing journey. And it was almost like I would pick up a breadcrumb and then I would, work with that healing acupuncture to a place where it felt like, okay, I think I'm ready to move on. And then the next thing would appear. And so it
Yeah.
was just this series that just kept leading me to the
Kept
next
going. Yeah.
the next step, like little
Okay.
lanterns on a foggy path.
Um, I'm taking notes just like I do with my clients because I have thoughts and things I want to ask you about and I have to note them down before I forget them. So that's what I'm doing. I always have this big notebook when I'm, clients, whatever. So
I'm the
that's what's
same.
yeah. So I love, first of all, I have to say, I love the fact that you cultivated it. You were in this like intensive intuition development program with yourself. You weren't outsourcing your power. You weren't going, this guru has the answer or this program is the only source of truth. You were like, you were in the center of your own process. Like you used other resources, but you were like mission control, and I think
Mm,
that's how it has to happen. I think the problems come when we wed ourselves to one paradigm, one ideology, rather than centering ourselves, which is my whole mission. Like center yourself in your own and learn how you do it. So that's one thing I want to say. Then the other thing I'd love you to speak to is this. It feels like there were two processes going on for you. So one was having to kind of unravel that conditioned relationship to your intuition, which sounds like mostly repression,
mhm.
is, yeah. So if you could speak to that. And then how did you learn the language of your intuition? Like how did you, or rather, what was your particular flavor? Because everyone's different. Like some people are, clairaudient, they hear things. Some people very, they feel things. I know you see a lot of images, so maybe, yeah, we'll start with like, yeah, how did you, yeah, like coming from a background where there was all of that kind of not even being allowed to, not even being believed. Like I think you said earlier,
Mm.
like, being told, no, no, you don't feel that, or you shouldn't feel that. Like, how does one kind of come back from that?
Whew.
Yeah, that's a big question.
I know, and it was a messy process, it wasn't linear. It felt like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Sometimes I would shoot forward, but I think it's when we're rebuilding that trust with ourselves,
Mm,
I like to think of it as building a muscle, like weightlifting, where you're starting with a 5-pound dumbbell. You need to do a lot of reps in order to upsize to the next dumbbell. But like my fear
Yeah.
muscle, my anxiety muscle, my outsourcing, my power muscle was huge. And so
Yeah.
it was really those daily practices and really quite frustrating. And
Mm.
allowing myself to be supported by different practitioners, and like you're saying, it's like I didn't put my trust in any one person, but I do recognize that at some places I did need more support from
Mm.
others,
Yes.
than
Yeah.
during
Good
other
point.
times, so that was important for me.
Yeah.
But all
Yeah.
of the teachers and practitioners I've ever really worked with have just been grounded and humble, and their goal was to teach you how to be your own healer, right?
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
your own be your own guru,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think we're at a place where we're done outsourcing our inner authority to others.
Yeah. Yeah. I think absolutely right now in human history, particularly in the US, definitely Australia, even France, UK, there's just definitely so many people have fallen from their pedestals. And it just is
Yeah.
really, it seems so obvious when you look at it like with the wisdom of history, like you can't outsource, but in the moment, when you're feeling vulnerable and you don't know what's happening and you need support and you don't have support, particularly if you don't have, really strong, attachment figures, you don't
Mhm.
have that loving family who, you can go to for guidance. It's really a natural thing to kind of look to someone who's a leader and project all that stuff onto them. And, and so that makes your journey even more kind of, you know, profound because you could have done that, but you didn't.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I almost got drawn in, right? It's like I wanna see the good in people,
Mm,
I wanna be positive in those really vulnerable moments, but I also have a really good ick meter
yeah.
where it's, or bullshit meter, excuse the
I do
language,
too.
but it's where, and I've learned to really trust that, where I get the gut
Yeah.
feel. I haven't always, but then I see when I don't, and then I see something come out, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that signal was there," but because I couldn't put any sort of logical sense, or, you know, my mind couldn't put a reason to it, I ignored it, but
Yeah.
my body just knew inherently there's an energy there that
Mm,
maybe we should just stay away from, but I do think that my guides
yeah.
really protected me from some situations too, looking
Mm,
back. And
yeah.
also for me, I've always been kind of an outsider. I've never been like on inner circles. I was always kind of the nerdy one, the shy one, the artsy
Yeah.
one.
Me too. Me
Yeah, like
too.
not
Yeah.
popular. I was bullied.
Yeah.
I was just like this little empath who wanted to be loved and wanted to be part of the circle and was always kind of pushed to the outside. But I think
Yeah.
that protected me in some way too, right?
Yeah.
Some of those figures, those
Absolutely.
gurus, like I wasn't cool enough to be in their circle. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I'm so
Yeah.
glad I was not cool enough.
Yeah.
And I think also people can sense when you can sense their bullshit.
Yeah, I've certainly had experiences where I've done group trainings where I've seen, these kind of toxic brand of leader, just behave in a way that's, just dodgy, just to give it a general label. And to feel like, wow, like, I've noticed that when predation happens, it's hasn't been with me. I can spot it. It's a vulnerable person. It's a person
Mm,
who's had a lot of trauma. They've got like a target on their back, which is unfortunate, but that's,
yeah.
yeah, that's what I've seen. But this leads us back around to like how you did find your own way, but specifically that you found your own way, kind of centering your own experience and using others, but building your own guidance system and developed a really specific way of receiving information from the Akashic records. And this is really important because there isn't like one kind of intuition. Like we all
Mhm.
operate so differently. So I'm curious, like, how did you discover your way? Because I've done a reading with you, so I know how you have a visual kind of metaphorical, really particular, beautiful flavor. I've done readings with some people who are just very like information, it's like, here's the timeline, ABC. So how did you discover your own, yeah, your own way?
It was definitely a process that unfolded. I mean, it's funny that you described the visuals the first thing that you remember because that wasn't how I channeled at first.
No.
It was very
Oh,
much just like someone having a conversation with someone in my head and having the words come through.
oh wow,
It was
really?
that way for,
Yeah.
probably the first 6 months to a year. And then it slowly, more visuals were coming through and feelings within the body too. So I would say the visuals were last, but just like also these feelings in the body, I'd feel pain in different parts of the body or different emotions. Almost
Ah,
like I was empathing their emotions and channeling.
yeah.
I do get emotional during readings, right? Because it's just like really powerful feelings coming through too, because the records are holding our feelings.
So you are feeling some of the client's material, like you're feeling that somatically, like you're
Yeah.
experiencing that in your body.
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
The visuals have definitely, I mean, if I can pick a favorite, the visuals have become a favorite because they usually come through in these really fun metaphors. For a while when I was channeling, weekly messages and posting them, it was coming through as different carnival rides, but
Ah,
it all made sense. I was
yeah.
just really enjoying the playful nature of that and how it was, some really deeper messages, but the delivery was not so, heavy.
Heavy, yeah. And what's the effect of that on people? Like, how can you track how having this information is creating is catalytic, you know what I mean? It's creating some kind of opening or change in someone.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I usually notice is kind of I'll when I open the records, I channel the initial messages that are coming through, any guides and guardians coming in, any imagery that I'm seeing. And usually, and after I do that, then I invite the person to ask their first question.
Hmm.
And many times after I'm done channeling that first set of messages, I just see them sigh. It's like this body sigh, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
this is what I," and they just start laughing. They're like, "Well, you kinda already answered all of my questions and got
Yeah.
me to read it," but I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
let's still ask them and, really dive into the depth," but it's like they feel seen because, we all have those intuitive, those feelings, like the images, the dreams, the words that come through. And
Yeah.
it's learning how to trust those and to have someone, else like channel for you and reflect and affirm what you've already been feeling. Like it really, you feel
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah. It creates a parasympathetic response, right? Like that
Um,
sigh, that moment is like it's essentially safety, like when we feel seen, we feel belonging. When we feel belonging, we feel safety. So yeah, it makes sense. And then safety is what we need to make changes.
exactly. And I've found, through this process, a lot of people fall away, right? Those that don't understand. And so a lot of the work I do and with people, it's all
Mm,
about those emotional boundaries. The image that comes through is like an archery target where
yeah,
those who really, have your back, and even if they
yeah,
don't understand, like they're open and curious and want to understand, like they're all at the bullseye. And then everybody else is kind of splattered along the rings. And it's not judging it, but it's just understanding where people are on that
yeah,
target so you can, modify your own emotional boundaries around that. I've needed to protect myself a little bit more as I've made these big life changes because,
yeah,
what I've done is like essentially burned my whole life down,
yeah,
architecting
yeah,
for 20
yeah,
years and like, let's burn the life down. Let's go on a giant road trip. Let's find a new place to live. And I'm a Taurus, so that's a lot
yeah.
of change.
A lot.
at
Yeah, it's a
one
lot of
time.
instability and
Yeah.
unpredictability.
And
Yeah,
for those who, knew me as I used to be, it was scary for them, and I would find that certain people would project their own fears around safety and security onto me. And,
mm,
I could recognize that it had nothing to do with me really, but I also recognized that I was also in this very vulnerable place, and I needed all the strength that I could possibly, gather to keep just taking one step at a time. And so I had to have some major boundaries with some people and let some other relationships fall
yeah.
away. because
Yeah.
I knew that they wouldn't understand and they didn't wanna try to understand, and that's
Mm,
okay, you know, it's but I think that's why it can be really hard to step onto our soul's path. There's a lot of grief because some relationships do fall away, but
yeah.
it's necessary, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm stepping into my most authentic self, and yeah, from the outside, it may look less stable and secure, but I also feel more myself than I ever have been, and I'm
Yeah.
evolving, I'm growing. But,
Yeah.
you know, I've had, you know, one client and a friend who I knew from Colorado, he's like, "You're not the same person that you were when I first met you in Colorado." And he
Yeah.
thought that was really cool, and I'm like, "That is really cool." But then
Yeah.
other you know, other folks who I know, they're just like, "Oh, you're not the same person," but they
Oh,
say
yeah,
it
different
badly.
intonation. Oh,
Like,
you're
but
really
we
not the same person.
yeah, we're
Yeah,
meant to be changing, we're meant to be growing. Like, that's
absolutely. And yeah, I mean, and this is essentially what awakening looks like from the outside, you know? And I
mhm,
talk about this a lot in episode 7, awakening, ascension, like what is it? And it's this slow process, and it's on a spectrum, right? Like there are many awakenings, just like a grand moment of oneness. Like there are all kinds of things, but from the outside, what it looks like, if you don't have the languaging of whatever spirituality around it, it looks like someone completely burning down their life and doing things in a way that seems to light them up, but it's baffling to outsiders, but essentially
society
what's
has a term
happening.
for it, the
Yeah.
midlife crisis,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it's not understood, but it's thought of
Yeah.
like throwing things away.
Yeah.
But I'm like, "Well, what if it's stepping towards something different?"
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that authenticity piece, like moving away from that conditioned self, moving away from what society expects of you, what your family expects of you, what all of the shoulds that you've had running through your programming like your whole life. As that falls away, something else is taking up more space. And
Mhm.
it sounds like, for anyone, not just for you, but like the lesson or the gift of your story and sharing it is to say intuition can be that thing, like getting more in touch with it can be that thing that triggers a deeper process of your own evolution, starting to listen to that.
Exactly, and, you know, people see when they look at my story, they see, like, the big leaps, but it really is the small steps every day because I get really, overwhelmed with big leaps, you know, looking at it's like looking at the whole staircase instead of just the next step,
Yeah.
and, you know, an image that's come through the records is this stream with all the stepping stones across, and some people just wanna be able to leap to the other side of the stream, but it's like, "Well, look at the stone that you're standing on right now." It is a necessary step on your journey, as is
Mm.
the next, as is the next. Like, each one needs to be there or you're not going to get to the other side.
Yes, yes. And that leads me back to something I said at the beginning, which is this idea of guidance. I'm really curious about your take on it because um, there seems to be this whole unseen world where there is this mechanism of like guardrails and guidance, and everything is available in consciousness, but what we see and experience, there's some benign force, which I know a lot of people will just say, well, that's God. Or I'm just curious what your experience is of what your experience is of that through the Akashic Records reading, like specifically, like if you could speak to like the timing of it, what we're supposed to know, times when we're not supposed to know, like, yeah, what does this all mean?
Oh, man. That's such a big question. Um, well, first of all, around the timing, you know, it's I feel like one of the questions we always ask is, "How long is this going to take? When am I going to
Yeah.
do it?" You know, and
Yeah.
it's like we
Yeah.
immediately because we're so focused on getting the thing, you know, now, and a lot of it is to alleviate the fear of the unknown.
Mm,
You know, I mean, I remember one of the readings I received before I quit my job, they said, you know, once you do this, you really can't go back. It's kind of like the no like no reentry point.
yeah. Point of no return. Yeah.
But also they're like, but also this is where you need to be really comfortable and continually you're going to have to continue to step into the unknown over and over and
Mm,
over again. And, you know, trust the timing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's totally not what I wanna hear." Like, you know? I
No.
I have conversations with the guys. I get,
No.
my East Coast comes out, and I get, like, a little snarky. But I've had to learn to trust the timing, and a lot of times it's just it's trusting the next step, but when it starts putting it all together and you look back on it, I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's why that worked out." But my
Yeah.
human mind couldn't have put things together.
No.
But when you follow those, those, like, bits of excitement that you get in your high heart area, like those bits of joy, or you may have a feeling like,
Yeah.
"I need to go here right now," like, those are the breadcrumbs, and it may seem like a silly small action, like, go to this coffee shop right now. But when I've followed those, sometimes it's connected me with a certain person that I've meant to meet, and it just starts this snowball effect.
Yeah.
And when I did, when I went on after I quit my job and I went on this like 4,000-mile road trip to figure out where I wanted to be next. I was living in Santa Cruz. I knew the energy was closing there and I didn't know where I was going to be next. And I was planning it through connecting with the Akashic Records. My friend gave me an astrocartography reading. So we were
Oh,
looking at
yeah, I love that.
different lines are, yeah,
Yeah.
and, it was like, "Ooh, maybe avoid this place, Sandpoint, that has a Mars line because 'cause that'll be, aggressive energy," and they're like, "Ooh, look at Missoula because you have a Jupiter line there, and that's going to be very expansive." So
Mm,
everything lined up, and I planned my trip accordingly. But
mm,
little did I know, I get into Missoula, and Missoula is great, but it just wasn't for me, and I just felt incredibly vulnerable and
mm.
felt miserable when I was there. Again, Missoula's fine, but like
Yeah.
and I was like, "Why did I book 6 nights here? Like, this was supposed to be the coolest part. This is supposed to be," I was like, "You're gonna meet community," and I thought, like, "Maybe I'll move here." Um, or in a reading that I received before I started that road trip, they're like, "Your guides will show up as deer," and I saw a deer so many points before this, like, very magically, and the only time I saw a dead deer was on the way into Missoula.
Oh,
Which I
wow.
didn't realize till later. I was like,
What a
"Huh,
sign.
that's interesting." But I get into Missoula, I'm really trying to have a good time, make it work, but I just,
Mm.
like, feel really vulnerable. I don't wanna go hiking, I don't really wanna do anything, and I just kinda cave in on myself, and, I hear the voice where it's like, "Send a voice note to this one friend, and then book an astrology reading with this other friend." And so I get on the emergency astrology reading, and this friend is
I
like,
love that, by the way, the emergency astrology reading. We
I'm
all
like
sometimes
in
need an emergency astrology reading.
I'm in the Airbnb in the bed, like, cuddled up with, like, tea and
Yeah.
snacks because Taurus and an
Yeah.
emergency astrology reading.
With the emergency astrology reading, yeah.
Yeah, and this is after I've left the voice note, and, I've been seeing numbers, and I saw 808 and 818, and I see, she does the sidereal, and so I saw, like,
Okay,
under the
yeah,
Mars, it
I
said 80818, and I'm like,
Vedic.
"What is that?" I've been seeing those numbers.
Yeah.
We talk, and essentially it was like Sandpoint may have actually been a good place for you to stop. Like, she gave me like a different
Mm.
perspective from the one I had gotten
Yeah,
from the first friend. And also that she's like, yes, Jupiter, where you are, Missoula, like, yes, the Jupiter line can feel expanding, but could also feel like you're a little baby plant in the middle of a hurricane. I'm like, that's exactly how I'm feeling.
yeah, big energy,
Big
Jupiterian,
energy. And
yeah.
so I was like, okay, how do I just get through these next 3 days? And I get off the call and I see a voice note back from my friend who I'd messaged before. And, we hadn't met in person. I knew her through the Akashic Records. You trade readings and just really support each other in that way. And she's like, and 2 minutes into it, she's like, wait a minute, we're going to be in Sandpoint in a few days. Would you want to meet us there? And I'm like, yes, I would. And so I changed everything and ended up meeting her. She'd been seeing the number 808 over and over. That's when I drove in. We met on 808 for the first time. But if I hadn't like listened to that, first gut feel to skip Sandpoint, go to Missoula, spend that time, we would have missed each other by a week. So it was like this
Wow.
orchestration of my logical
Yeah,
mind couldn't have put it together. My guides apparently were doing something else so we could, I could, if I didn't
yeah,
have a terrible time, I didn't message her, like all these things had to happen for us to meet for the first time. And it was really
yeah,
special. But it just showed me that, I think sometimes we think that it's going to just be a super magical journey all the time. And a lot of it is, but that was like a crying on the couch week. And
yeah,
but the magic was still working for me, and even though it was really messy, like it all turned out okay after the fact. But I think it's important to be in those crying on the couch
Yeah,
days and really
totally.
honor the emotions and that experience because we're humans and we're not here
Yeah,
to
yeah,
bypass that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I don't even know if that answered your question, but that's what
Yeah, totally. No, I got so much out of that. Like, I think I mean, experience is very similar. And, by the way, that crying on the couch, like, I think one thing we do really wrong in our current contemporary world is we take a symptom, we take an expression and we pathologize it. We're always looking for people to be happy and content and at peace, but sometimes that hurricane, that tornado, that eruption of emotion or energy or like somatic sensations, that is the healing.
it is.
It is. It is the healing. I mean, it's great to have times when we're at peace, but it's wrong to think that, a spiritual person or an awakened person is just like constantly in this like Buddha kind of state, right? Because we're always
No,
moving and changing. And sometimes our bodies are beautifully processing things for us,
they are.
releasing things, metabolizing things. And yeah, I mean, the whole idea that I think you said earlier, we're stepping on, was it, we have to step on one stone at a time?
Mhm.
Yeah. Like we're always like trying to find the balance between being in the moment and looking at the bigger picture. And
Yes.
I do think that there is protection. There is a benevolent force. And I mean, I experience it like, like guidance.
Mhm.
Sometimes the energies feel more angelic, you know, sometimes it feels more like, an ancestor. Sometimes I'm just like, well, I feel guidance. I don't need to name it or give it a category, but I definitely experience that it's there and that there's this guiding hand. And there's so
Yeah.
many things in my life I look back and go, okay, that makes sense. I mean, like for me, like if someone had said to me, as a 22-year-old writing my first novel, well, you're going to write 3 novels and you're going to have 25 years of rejection to get you to the point where you publish your own book and back yourself, I would have been like, wow, I don't need to know that. I'll just not write anymore. Thanks. That sounds too painful. No, thank you.
That's really and isn't that a good example of why you don't need all the information at the beginning?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you
Sometimes
get overwhelmed to be like, "Oh, that sounds like a crazy journey. Maybe I'll just sit here on the couch in a blanket and
yeah,
not bother."
I'll go get a conventional job and, you know, make
Yeah.
lots of money instead. Cause yeah. And it comes back to this thing of, I just recorded episode 9, which is the finale of the series 1, and it's all about like the future human, which I want to get into with you next. And
Mhm.
one of the things I talk about is purpose. Like, what is the purpose of being human? Small questions like that. And I reference different thinkers and channelers and so on, but I'll just give you the answer that I've landed on anyway from my work of, being with people like in a therapeutic context. Like the purpose is to experience being human. Like it's not really
Yeah.
complicated. It's not like to amass all the things and to have a big mission and, blah, blah, blah. It is just to have the experience of being a human in flesh and blood and feeling those emotions. And that's it. That's the purpose. So
You said that.
if that's,
That's
sorry.
that's what's come through in the records too. When you were talking about the emotion before, I was just like, "Oh, yeah, I'll"
Yeah.
it's that I mean, that comes through the records every single time because sometimes I'm just so tired and I just wanna bypass the things, like, let's be
Mm.
serious. Sometimes we've just had enough.
Ah,
Um, but, the guidance that comes through is like, you need to feel all of this.
yeah.
And it's like and yes, also receive support, when you're meant to, but it's like you're meant to feel what we like to label as the messy emotions, the grief,
Yeah.
the anger, the frustration. You're meant to feel all that. That's like the well-rounded
That's
human
the
experience, and
yeah,
it's not
it
to,
gives
like,
us wisdom.
bypass trauma or anything, but it's like
Yeah,
it's not all meant to be all love and light all the time because that's the bypassing.
yeah. And if your purpose is just to experience it, then we can't know the whole path all at once. We can't have the roadmap because we're also flesh and blood, and our whole nervous system is just organized around safety, right?
Mhm.
So, and feeling tremendous emotion and feeling like you're in crisis is not a safe experience. So, if you had a if you had your script just laid out and you're going to have like 5 years of nonstop crying and trauma processing, you'd go, well, I think I'll just bypass that. Thank you very much. That doesn't feel safe. And then you would miss out the experience that maybe your soul intended for you. So there's so many reasons why I think we have to practice living in the moment and not
Mhm.
tapping into every single thing. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I do think, I mean, from my own experience, I know that all of the trauma that I've had in my life has led me to this place. I mean, it hasn't been fun. I don't know, I do feel my soul chose it because
Mm,
it brought me to this place where I'm able to help others, right? It's that from your greatest wounds come your greatest gifts.
mm.
So I wouldn't trade it in, but it was also really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And we can't minimize that. It's difficult, but I think without minimizing it or without making light of it, of the intensity of it, I feel like, I mean, I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? That I really feel this, in working with people as well and looking at how any kind of this inner work has a ripple
Mhm.
effect. I feel like when we do the work ourselves, we're doing it for
Mm.
ourselves. We're doing it for our families, for our lineage, for the people in our community, and it really helps me to kind of, when I think of the hard parts, I really think, well, it is about me and it's also not about me. It is, and
Yeah.
it is for the collective. When you do this work and you shed, you come into more of your soul self.
Mhm.
It changes other people around you. It
It does.
changes the environment, the world.
I think it does, especially when you're shifting patterns and you're stepping out of your comfort zone and people can see you healing. It's like, people have told me that my story inspires them, which I'm like, really? Like and it's given
Mm.
them permission to search
Yeah,
for something themselves.
absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and just I think so much can be excused with the, oh, I'm just this way, or oh, that's just how things are. But we do have I could have gone that way. I started going that way. I'm like, I want to break this pattern. I want to do something different. It was
Yeah.
the harder path, right? Like, I think those systems and those lineage patterns, those societal patterns can be, I mean, they're there for a reason and it's pervasive. And sometimes I'm like, maybe being carried by the current in that direction would be easier, but it wouldn't feel fulfilling. And it's like you
Yeah.
just don't notice that there is another current nearby
Yeah.
that you can choose.
Hmm. It gives other people permission, I think, and that's
Yeah.
what the power of your story, Kirsten, and sharing it, on a podcast is, people inevitably, there'll be someone who's like, well, gosh, that gives me permission, or that validates my own gut feeling that there can be another way to be in the world. And I look at my own life, and just for example, my daughter who's now 20, and how I've struggled my whole life to kind of back myself as a creative person, as a writer, but I I did all that really hard, heartbreaking work, but I raised her a different way and gave her a different message around. And she's seen me go. And now at 20, she's where I was at, you know, probably last week,
And that's
just
amazing.
just in terms of her commitment to her art. She's an actor, her ability to go, I choose this. I don't need a plan B. I have a plan A. I'm going to back myself as an artist and not having to go down this road of self doubt and like, can I be an artist? It's such a difficult path. Can I be a creative? So I
Ooh.
see the healing even in my lineage, but of course, then I see it in my clients with everything, how their healing affects the collective. So
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, that hits right there because I remember why I decided to go to architecture school. It's because I didn't want to be a starving artist, but art was my love.
Yeah. And your art is amazing. And I'm going to get you to share at the end your some of your links, because one of the things Kirsten does is these channeled pieces, right, for people.
Mhm.
But anyway, we'll get to that at the end. I'm dying to ask you about the collective now. So,
Okay.
But I'm going to start with Edgar Casey. So a lot of people know about Edgar Casey. I just quoted him in my episode 9. So I've been reviewing his material, and he's famous for being America's sleeping prophet. He would go into these deep trance states in the 1920s. So before anyone knew, I mean, before it was normalized. So you have to first of all appreciate that he was a man like way, way, way ahead of his time. Like now we
Yeah.
take for granted. People channel, people do whatever. They speak light language. They talk to galactic beings. But this was a time in the 1920s where, it wasn't so normal. And he was a pretty normal man. I think he was in his 50s even when he started doing it. But he
Wow.
channeled apparently 14,000, he gave 14,000 readings in his lifetime. And he was known for his health advice. So he could read someone and talk about where they had deficiencies, what they should eat, what their protocol should be. He would also diagnose relationships, friendships, like incredible. And there's an Edgar Casey Institute in the States where they have all of his material. But he is also famous for predicting like the future of humankind. And one of the things he said, I'm going to read a quotation, is um, the creative force for him is like consciousness, what we call consciousness. The spirit of the creative force, as it moves through the various centers of the body, brings in its activity the awakening of these centers. And as they are awakened, they bring the consciousness of the individual, that which is as a new birth, a new understanding, a new direction. So for him, the centers were, he's referring to the chakras, but he saw them
Yeah.
as the endocrine glands. Like that's how he saw that the chakras corresponded to the endocrine glands. So, and he is saying that like there's going to be this evolution of the body as consciousness expands. And he said that in other writings as well. So I'm really curious if what your experience is with the Akashic records in terms of like, do you see there is a shift happening collectively? Do you see people like biologically opening up new abilities, like anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, so I've noticed that people are just more open in general, right? And I think like there's more of a focus too on managing our energy and
Mm,
understanding that we are energy, right? Like um, and there's so much, like there's a bigger somatic piece to that. Like in a world where we are very much just in our heads. I mean, I grew up
mm,
in a house where it was like, the intelligence, the mind, like that
yeah.
was king. And I really think people are starting to realize that there's more forms of intelligence within us. And it's tuning into all of those, like, right, like our body intelligence, like the spirit intelligence, like all the different, auric
Mm,
um, layers. And I feel like there is so much information coming in now. People talk about codes. I mean, I'm just always complaining about solar flares. Like, there's just a lot of energy coming in.
mm,
And right now, it feels almost more like not managing that, but alchemizing and integrating that.
mm,
We get so focused on, shooting out of our bodies and ascending, but we're meant to be in this body. And I think there's that movement of coming back to being in touch with all the kingdoms within nature, right? Like going outside and we're feeling these codes. Like I was hugging my redwood tree before I came onto this podcast with my feet on the earth and just grounding, because there's
wow.
so
Yeah.
much energy coming in, and it makes me feel like really buzzy and really
Yeah.
activated, and the energy needs to, move into the earth. The meditation I do at the beginning of my readings, it's like, we're starting in our heart space with the rainbow light. We're bringing it up to the akasha where it's adding the sparkle, but then we're bringing it back down through the body, anchoring it into Mother Earth,
Mm,
and then bringing it back up into the heart space, because it's like that's how we integrate the messages into our body. It has to not just be in the mind or above in the ether. Like we need to feel it into our bodies. And I think I mean, that's why we're here on this earth, is to be, in this like vessel in this body. And
mm,
to me, that's really, spirituality is having that connection to everyone
yeah.
and everything around us.
Yeah.
but just like in a
Yeah.
really in a grounded way, you know? It's like I'm talking to the birds and the animals all the time and the
Mm,
trees and just, um and allowing that space too. You know, I think we can jump from
mhm.
thing to thing and want to input so much, like, you know, take in so much information about, "Ooh, this is the next healing modality. This is my next lesson. This is," you know, like, there's, I mean, Instagram reel after Instagram reel of, like, different channeled messages, but, you know,
Mm.
my God, you're like, "Hey, like, stop." There's been so much input, but there hasn't been a lot of space to let it move through your system.
Ah, yeah. So we would all benefit from some barefoot in nature, quiet time, empty space without to integrate.
Yeah, lots of touching grass.
Lots of touching grass, yeah. So what you're saying is that I think you're saying that people are, well, first of all, people are more open to, just non-ordinary explanations for reality,
Yeah.
for more multidimensional understandings to like apply to their own lives. And also people are more kind of oriented around the somatic piece of it. People are more or less like spirituality has to be out there and leaving the home and leaving the body. It's has to be more in here.
I think so. And, you know, that kind of goes into there can be so much performative spirituality and, you know, and we think we're not doing it right. But spirituality can look like, you know, allowing yourself to read a book on the couch while, you know, and it's getting your brain into like those theta waves
Yeah.
and you're just allowing things to settle.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ways to integrate. And like, I'm gonna get my romantasy novel, I'm going to get a cup of tea, you know, or I'm going to be out in my garden planting,
Mm.
you know, tending to the
Oh,
veggies and the
yes.
herbs. Like it's right, a little
Mm.
bit of earth witch energy there, but it's like the balance, right?
Mm.
After an Akashic Records reading, I need to go outside. I need to put my feet on the
Absolutely.
earth.
Yeah.
I need to just come back into my body fully and just feel what it feels like to be a human again. Because I'm like, I'm a
Yeah.
little swirly. It's a lot of energy and it needs
Mm.
somewhere to grow or to go, right? It's like grounding the
Yeah.
electrical system.
And do you have any feelings or insight into kind of like timelines, and have you noticed anything in your readings, like in terms of their different timelines people seem to be on, or what the collective is moving to? I mean, I know that you work with people very personally, so maybe not, but I have to ask for my own curiosity.
Yeah, and I do mostly work one-on-one, but I think, I mean, what I'm seeing, it seems to be almost this split between those who are really coming back to their inner authority and those who are still looking for someone to give them the answers.
Mm,
And I get it because there's, you know, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty out
mm,
there. What I would say it's, you know, it's just taking those little steps. Like my self-trust is not perfect by any measure. You know, there are days where I'm yelling at my guides, I am frustrated, I don't know where I'm going, but then it's like coming back to that grounding and centering. It's how do we navigate when there is the chaos around us? How do we navigate when there is a lot of instability and there's all these things going on in the world that are, you know, are really horrible? And it's acknowledging that, but also I'm like, okay, I'm in my garden and it's acknowledging the beauty or getting together with a friend and just feeling that sense of connection again.
yeah, connection to self,
Mhm.
connection to others. It's stepping back into what makes you you. It's stepping back
Yeah,
into authenticity, isn't it? Like for
exactly.
you, gardening, that's what makes you you as well. And I think that, I mean, that's such a beautiful way to bring the conversation to a close, is this idea that in the midst of the chaos, when we become overwhelmed by our life or by the world out there, the answer is really comes back to just being in your lane as the most authentic version of yourself. Like that can actually make a difference to the world out there, which is a huge leap of logic, I know, and it's something I talk about a lot over my solo series. So, it's not an easy thing to get to. Like, how does me being me help the world? Just you have to listen to like episodes 7, 8, and 9. But I feel that. I mean, just at a somatic level, like when I come back to myself and I play to my strengths and I'm the most authentic version of me, it's like, oh, like I still have, there's still this Michelle who's just the most Michelle in the world of chaos. Like I can still show up every day, sit with people, do my reading and writing, and it settles my nervous system. And
Mhm.
then I'm more available to people around me. And then they're more available to people around them. And it's like a ripple, you know?
Exactly. I mean, I think they've, shown that authenticity is like the highest
Yeah.
vibration if we're talking about, the different feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really is important for us to fill our own cup. I think, that can be a little bit baked into society as well. It's like this martyrdom, self-sacrifice, giving to others
Oh,
over and over and over again, but we haven't filled our cup. So it's from this place of depletion.
yeah.
And oh, the other day something popped up and it was like, it takes like very little energy to just be you. It takes a
Mm.
lot more energy to be the people pleaser, to be someone that you're not.
Yeah.
I was
Well
like,
worth
wow, like
remembering.
spending all of that energy, like not being ourselves.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, there's some of the depletion right there.
for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for this conversation. Really juicy. I could just keep asking questions, I think, for a while. But why don't you share with the listeners, yeah, where people can find you? I'll make sure to put the links in the notes, but yeah, what you offer, and how people can find you.
Perfect. So I offer Akashic Records readings, either single sessions or packages. I also offer what I call energy blueprints, which is like a visual representation of your energy. I
Mm.
connect with your Akashic record. You can give me a specific focus or intention, and I'm channeling as I'm creating this. It's visually, it's like this layered oil pastel and white charcoal pencil,
Ooh.
but they're very, very unique. And I have a package that I just created where I'm combining 3 1-hour sessions, 3 15-minute voice notes, because we've all had a reading where afterwards we have 1 or 2 follow-up questions and just need a
Mm.
little bit more information. And that's what those are intended to be. And at the conclusion of the journey, I'm creating an energy blueprint for your
Ooh.
intention, what wants to come through. You can find all of this information on my website, which is kirstensnobeck.com, KirstenSnobeck.com. That also links to my Etsy store. I have what I call universal energy blueprints. So I have like Mother Earth Nurtures Creation, Abundance,
Mm.
Universal Unconditional Love, these energy blueprint pieces of artwork that I've created with these specific frequencies in mind, and they're infused with Reiki and supportive frequencies. And I have those available as prints and journals, tote bags, and apparel. They're a lot of fun. And then that's also where if people just want an energy blueprint, they could commission that there as well.
Yeah.
But I'm really
Beautiful.
excited about the new package because for me, like having that momentum, I mean, I told you about that 5 month process I had with all those different readings that
Yeah.
really created a
Yeah.
sense of momentum, but also
Yeah.
spaciousness with in between, right? Like having like once a month and then you have time to let the guidance settle, to start taking action. And then it's
Yeah.
like keeping this ball rolling.
Yeah, and people then get a really direct experience of the Akashic records for themselves, and they start to work with their own intuition and really cultivate it through that process. And yeah, it's like a direct line to the infinite. How exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
So
love
check it out, everyone. And yeah, I'm sure we will speak again in the future. Thank you so much.
it. Thank you so much. This has been lovely. I really appreciate it. And I'm definitely excited to speak again in the future.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.